the best way to eat your vegetables. Turn it into lamb chops first. So this week I'm going to do the first in a series of videos on how we keep our Australian native stingless bees. I'm not going to shoot these videos one after another, but at the end I'll compile them into a playlist so that all the information is easy to access. So firstly, why keep native bees in a box? We can easily source native bee colonies in their natural logs, but the logs are heavy, they're difficult to move. They're difficult to harvest the honey or propolis from without destroying the log, and the hive box design allows us to easily propagate hives. So if we want more than one hive, very easy to do with the box. So if we want to get full use out of our native bees, this is the way to go. So the way a native bee colony works is they find themselves a hollow chamber, usually in an old dead tree, but they'll set themselves up in plant pots or meter boxes, any sort of hollow chamber that they deem appropriate. What they do then is they'll block off the top and the bottom and just leave themselves a chamber that's to the size that they like. Now in the centre of that chamber will be a cylindrical, what they call a brood chamber, and that just consists of layers and layers of developing eggs in cells. Around the outside of that they store their honey and their pollen in what they call honey pots. They don't store their honey and pollen in little cells like honeybees. They make little bags, basically. That's where they get their other name, is sugar bag bees. So when it comes to designing a box for these native bees, it needs to do a couple of things. One of the most important things is to provide a correct size area for the brood chamber, and I'll explain why. These two bottom sections are what comprise the brood chamber. Now, when we propagate one of these hives, we do what's called a split, and it's exactly that. We split the hive in half, so this bottom section would have a new top piece put on, and this top piece would go on top of a new empty bottom piece. So when you do that split, ideally you would want half of the brood in the top box and half of the brood in the bottom box. If this box is designed too large for the species of bee that you're keeping, what can happen is most of the brood can be either in the bottom box or in the top box, so that when you do a split, you'll end up with one strong hive and one weak hive. If the boxes are designed correctly, the brood chamber should be pretty much in the middle, so that when you split you'll end up with two equal strength hives, which is what you really want. Another thing that can happen if your boxes are sized too big for the species, the bees will have a lot of storage space available to them in these bottom two boxes. So you'll find you'll have a lot of honey stored in the bottom here, which is difficult to access without damaging the hive. Ideally, we want the honey stored in the top box, which will be your honey super, which goes on top. So it's really critical that we size the brood chamber boxes correctly for the species of bee that we're keeping. So how do we know what species of bee require what size box? Well, there's a guy by the name of Tim Hurd. He's an ex-CSIRO scientist, and he's pretty much devoted his life to researching our native stingless bees, and he's written a book that's got every bit of information you'll ever want to know, from identifying the bees, where you'll find them, to how to build their hives, everything. Well worth the 30 or 40 bucks it costs. If you're looking at native stingless bees, get a copy of this book. It's got everything you want and more. If we were to use just two basic empty boxes to keep our brood chamber in, when we separated them and pull them apart, what can happen is the brood that's kept in the top box can actually fall out, which is obviously not desirable. So what we do is we put a couple of just thin pine bars in the centre of the two, and that just provides support for that top section of the brood chamber when you're doing a split. They're called splitter bars, and very important addition to your hive. So once you've got the brood chamber sized correctly, the bees won't have a huge amount of storage space in here to store pollen and honey. The brood chamber will take up most of this box. Now you can use that to your advantage, because you give them an extra space and they'll want to store stuff in here. So the top box is just storage space for the bees. Now in a natural hive, the tendency for the bees is to store their pollen first as they go into the hive entrance. So the pollen tends to be stored close to the front of the hive. So what we do is we basically blank off the top of the brood chamber and just leave a thin slot as the only way for them to access that top box. So what you'll find is the pollen will tend to get stored down in here because it's closer to the entrance, and then the bees will take their honey up through that slot and store it in the top. And that makes it easy to harvest. You just take the top box off and it should be full of honey. The timber you use to build the boxes is pretty important too. The main thing it needs to do is provide insulation from the heat and the cold. 25mm thick pine is the minimum that's recommended. The pine, they reckon, has better insulation properties than hardwood, but you can certainly use hardwood as well. Just need to make it a little bit thicker. We use 35mm pine here, only because it was the cheapest stuff we could get at the time. Having said that, it was cheap and the lengths weren't very straight, so it was hard to make good square boxes from. I think you'd be better off trying to find some good cypress pine or something like that that's going to last a bit longer outdoors, and something a bit better quality than what we've used. The last thing you need to do is provide a bit of protection from the elements for your box. 3 coats of exterior paint is generally enough. White's the traditional colour for beehives, but you can get away with any light colour. We tend to keep our hives out of the sun anyway, so colour's not super important. If you can keep the water off your hives, they'll last a lot longer. Some people use pieces of ridge capping, just bend into shape so they'll clip on top of the boxes. I just tend to make platforms with roofs on them so that I can put 2 or 3 or 4 hives in one place. So that's about all you need to know really for hive box design. The critical thing is to get the sizing right and to make sure there's not too many gaps between your layers. The bigger the gaps there are, the harder your bees are going to have to work to seal it up. In the coming months, as it starts to warm up, we're going to take one of our hives apart and I'll show you how to do a split. We're also going to do what's called an adduction. We've got a hive that's still in its log and we're going to attempt to get them to colonise one of these boxes without damaging the log. So we've got a few things like that coming up. I can't shoot too much at the moment because the weather's still quite cold. While it's cold, the bees don't get out and forage much, so any damage you do to the hive takes them a long time to repair. If you do it during the warmer months when they're out and about all day, they can fix things pretty quick. So all that will be left for another couple of months until probably mid-spring. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about our native stingless bees. Plenty more to come, but thanks for watching.